Yo, my blood.
Oh, big chef.
So good.
What's up with you, Kunjani?
Good. Alright, okay, let's get into it. You always press for time.
Eh?
We always pressed for time, so let's just get into it.
Let's get into it. And I think if ever ndikhumbula kakuhle izolo besigqibele icebo likuwe into yoba uphe laa view yakho on the whole matter.
Yeah. Okay, so with regards to the cultural practices and most things in life, I think that, like I said again, a lot of things they make sense at that time and place with that particular structure that people do have. So, in terms of the cultures, like as was explaining, like it makes absolute perfect sense, yeah, bo. In order to keep order, in order to keep um, uh, everyone going forward, yeah, bo. You have to kind of make those adjustments, yeah, bo. Such as like Ugoluga, for example, like
Yeah.
back then was completely different, yeah, bo, to how it is now. And as times have changed, a lot of things have changed and have adapted, but you still try to keep the core structures or the values of what it actually is, yeah, bo. So obviously the problem with that is that as you keep going more and more forward, you get more and more inclined to actually just give up the whole culture to begin with. Yeah, because like, what do you have more and more questions about it, and also when you make these decisions, you don't also foresee the future. Yeah, you don't foresee the future, and then when you don't foresee the future and you're then in it, you then realize, well, no, man, there's actually another world out there. It's not just you're in Cape Town. You then, I mean, when you're in Eastern Cape, you realize that there's Cape Town. Then you realize that there's Joburg. Then you realize that there's Zimbabwe. Then you realize that there's Africa, and then the continent, and the other continents, and then the world. Yeah, well, and then once you do that, you realize how much of a dot you are compared to everyone else. So when you make these decisions, it's only made because the people that you can already see. Yeah. So now coming back to that, then with this Intlaulo, it's as time has gone by, it makes absolutely, like, when you think about it, there is no reason why it should ever happen. And I said again, it's like it's the same with Ilobola. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense at all. And if you look at it, even in other cultures, it's exactly the same thing. Yeah, but things started off in India with small cultures, and then there's forced, say, marriage, for example. As time has gone by and people have expanded, less and less people start to do it. Yeah, but same with Scotland and Ireland with dowry. Yeah, but where it starts in small little villages, and then as people start to expand and go elsewhere, then they do less and less things like that and become more modernized. Yeah. So yeah, that's my stance on it. Is that I don't think that there ever should be Tlaul. Um, and and the same with Ilobola.
Orange angakuthanda kakhulu.
Yeah. And the same with the same with Ilobola. That the report has finally convinced me, and I actually went out to look for it as well. But there should be no reason for a guy to pay Ilobola. If anything, the other party should pay. So the other party that's not male should pay, or no one should pay. But it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but I think at least actually the default setting should be that if you want to pay, you can pay. If you don't want to, you shouldn't be shunned for it.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to, before
Yeah.
you go further, I will lose
Mm-hmm.
some of the few points that I would love to comment on regarding your.
All right.
Starting with intlawulo, perhaps we should treat it like intlawulo regardless of which one it is, because to a certain extent, even ilobola is a sort of intlawulo, even though I would say it's just a matter of how much uhlawula ngakhona.
Yes.
We had touched on the importance or the reasoning behind how it was created, the whole structure of it. But perhaps
Mm-hmm.
when you actually go back again and analyze the base around where the whole thing is standing. I think yesterday I had mentioned that everyone stands at a certain ground.
Yes.
When you are in the ground where you're questioning the existence of these cultural practices, you are in the ground. So you're questioning based on those grounds, you see. However, if ever the practice that you're questioning, you were still within the perimeters of its, I would say, headquarters, you wouldn't see otherwise. So we can say that it is the influence of the outside. Whether that influence good influence or not a good influence, it's what we are here to actually talk about. But we can first of all start by admitting that before you can be able to question the existence of these cultural practices, you need first to be influenced by something else which is outside of the perimeters of them. That would be our first acknowledgement of the conversation. Therefore, we can further go, is it good? And then how we judge. Unfortunately for me, yesterday I was reading a book. It's called Elements of Moral Philosophy. It's actually on the same thing that we speak about the cultural practices, the normal decision making on day to day, but they give you scenarios that are very challenging. And what I pick is that whatever that you're dealing with, what's important is the reasoning behind it, and then you critically analyze the situation, like we did today, which we could even now. So in this matter at hand, we can say that the cultural practices start to not make sense when we emerge the cultural world with the westernized world. That is where the contradiction begin. However, if ever you see within the perimeter, let's make example of Eastern Cape in terms of geographical locations. And Eastern Cape is now divided into two in terms of how people perceive information. The closer you get to the city, the more you will have this kind of question. The further you go to the city, the more you're gonna get exposed to the people who are ignorant of the primitive worlds. So that is so now we need to look at what I would say that it depends on what is our motive is. You know, what are we achieve, what are we trying to create? Are we trying to get people to their roots? Are we trying to get people to be as modern as possible so they can be able to compete with the current world? Are we trying to be realistic? And then we need to look at what is our end goal. I think that will make us to be able to make a very sound decision. What is our end goal when we enter into this quest of this whole conversation? Are we trying to create a society for everyone? What are we going to look at when we create the better society for everyone? Yeah. Is it possible for us as Africans to practice otherwise than we are? Why should we do so? You see. So in this question at point, I would say that there isn't a formula. There isn't a right or a wrong answer. It depends on the reasoning. And that is because it's too vast. There is just too much to say that anything goes as long as the reasoning behind it is logical. To a certain extent, we need some sort of formulation. That is how the principles, the rules, the values are created. They created on those standards that we agree on this. This is our common law, as will be acknowledged by the Constitution or customary law. So in this time, I wouldn't actually fight the sentiment of perhaps to a certain extent, these Ntlawulos are no longer fashionable or are no longer how can I put it, they no longer fit the purpose of the society we're trying to create right now. But when whose society, you see. So I just wanted to point out that one part, that one of the things that are most important is actually the geographical location and the people that that occupy that certain section. Like I mentioned yesterday, that we no longer have these societies now, we have communities. Now with that, it means I'll be Imbono, I work with the Makosa, I work with the Mazulu, I work with the person from North Africa, I work with a person from overseas, I work with the person who's a colored. Now, that means when it comes for me to create relations, I'm most likely to mingle with someone who's not from my background. Now, what does this mean? This person does not subscribe to these customary laws of ours. So, what are we trying to achieve when we say that when we criticize our existence? What are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to imagine people? If I'm dating a white person, why this person I'm supposed to pay lobola to them when they do not subscribe? What if they say they do not want the lobola? How am I gonna feel? If I am the guy is don't want to pay lobola to me because it is not their culture. So it is all this the mixture of different people from different backgrounds. Now it creates this environment. Do we really want that environment? Because we need to move in totality. And I think it's very important that we need to know that if ever we're changing these small segments, then we are obliged to change in totality, because we're going to contradict ourselves along the way. If we say question these cultural practices, are we only going to question the one topic, or are we going to question also the whole cultural practices at large? But we need.
So I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
All right. Get there yourself. Get there before I into your territory.
Yeah, so even with that, like again, it's that's a good. That's why, when you were speaking, you were saying that, well, before that, conversations like this will get to a point whereby it becomes the metaphysical, and then it becomes the religious, right? And the reason why it gets there is because exactly what you're saying now is that as soon as you start to put a microscope on one of the things, then whatever the result of that, you're going to have to then zoom out and then look at the microscope of 5 other things, and then zoom out and then look at 10 and zoom out, and then by the time you zoom all the way out, what's left is religion, right? So yeah, exactly. So that's the thing then, is that then you obviously can't put it the other way around, because you can't talk about the big factor and you haven't even solved the smaller pieces of it to begin with. So again, it's like the reason why I'm saying that I'm not saying that I want the default for it not to happen. I'm saying that the default should be that if you want to do it, you can do it. If you don't, then you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't be shunned for it, right? Because again, there are some traditional people that are out there, and there's certain communities where this thing actually does make sense, right? And it keeps them in order. So you don't want to say, take it out, it's not going to work, because then it's like, what do you replace it with, right? The same with religion. It's the problem with atheism as well, is that you take out religion from atheists, then what do you replace it with? What do you have left with? Because now you just, again, if you're building a structure and you have a base and you say, no, this base doesn't work, and you take it out, then the whole thing collapses. Which is why people don't want those things taken out, because then what do you support it with? Yeah. So again, with exactly what I'm saying as well, is that you question this, so you question Ntlawulo, then from there you move to Ilobola, and then from there you move to the Lualugo, for example, and then from there you move on to Ilanuga, doesn't know this way, like Pupile, Imiclimi. And then from there you move on to other stuff, and then you go, okay, guys, so should we change all of these? Should we change all of these things? Should we keep some of them the same? What is it that we're going to? And then where does religion fit into all of this as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So now if you have a hard stance on something like Intlaulo and Ilobola, right? And you don't want to even change that. Like, how would you even change the rest?
Right. So, one, like you have mentioned that you need to be somewhere either way. Because I think that is what you're exactly saying, that whether when you take out Ilobola, then it means there's supposed to be placement. From how it sounds to me, it sounds like everything has its opposite, and everything exists in its opposite. You need the of it before you can actually take it out. So when you take it out, you need to be creating something else, and then you're going to be reasoning behind. Again, I want to go back to the point of the societal structure that we're trying to achieve. When we question, because the current problem is that, especially with the urban areas, the townships, is that there is no societal structure. You not necessarily rely on governance because the structures of governance do not address the actual basis of our living. Therefore, you would say that people are ungovernable because they find it hard to actually adjust to the systems of governance. But on the other side, by law, which is the governing body of the moral conduct of the people, you find that people need to do certain things and not supposed to do certain things so that they can be able to comply with the law. So now this, our society, our communities have no structure. We have nothing that governs us. We have no rules. And therefore, in my opinion, it is a cause for chaos, and I would blame for a number of chaos that is happening in where we live because we have no societal structures. It is evident.
Yeah, it'll be far worse than the cure.
Sorry?
It'll be far worse than what you're trying to actually achieve if you have nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, we're trying to create harmony, a space that is. So what is more important is what we're trying to achieve. That is how we're going to understand the importance of those structures being in place. Mentioned within law is that the focus is based on the importance of a woman at home and trying to create stability within the boys before they get married and trying to create to create families. So the primitive structures are very admirant of the family. Actually, after large, it is family based. You deconstruct structure, then you've killed Africa. And currently, it is that is the problem that we have currently is that many structures are not strong enough. Now we cannot exactly implement or actually parent the children as we suppose. So with this, just like in Lungelo, there is interdependency with other small segments of our cultures. So you cannot remove Lungelo without impeding with another structure that is equally important or important than Lungelo. So that is where it is contradictory for us is that when we question Lungelo, I'm gonna be asking you, okay, you're gonna be questioning Lungelo simple because it do not fit your scenario, but yet you're not gonna question Ulwaluko because and that pride you reside with you. Perhaps what we could achieve in this conversation is how we can emerge these structures with the current way of living that is governing. Because the governance, it comes from the top, and our structures come from the bottom. Somewhere along the way, they do not meet each other. Governance schooling comes from the school, and the system of trade is money. Here, you have me who has a child. I am not working, but this is my child. And it means I cannot pay the June Lobol or the June. So I need to start looking for other means. So whether I'm gonna be trying to step away from it while the family wants it, it's gonna be a question for another day. But now I think what's very important is that we look at our structures, cultural structures, and try to propose solutions as to how can our cultural structures emerge with the entire world. But first, before we do that, we need to question, do we want that? Why is it important? Because like I mentioned, currently South Africa is divided into the rural and the urban side. Now we have people coming from the rural areas to reside to the urban side, but only for certain life aspects, like to get education, get job, and all that. As soon as they get that, they move back. Now you have this person who have the influence of both. Now these people have nothing they can strongly hold on. These people are shakeable because they've got the influence of both of the worlds. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to find the common ground for these people? Are we trying to create a whole new world? Or are we trying to restore what we have lost? Or are we trying to create just a whole new thing? So there can't be an absolute answer to this, in my opinion. There can't be an absolute formula. Perhaps you'd have to go back to you and use your approach of saying that it is a matter of your preference. We need to give people preference.
Yeah.
However, the problem with preferences is that they disrupt the social structure, nothing that we stand for. Therefore, there is ability to other problems that may come on the side. And also, we are mingling with people who have intense structures, who are, their structures are standing still. Now, you come in with your flexibility, it becomes a contradiction within them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So again, that's why I'm very careful to not say that it should not be there. You know, as in like you should actually eradicate it at all. It should be an option. Because again, I mean, there's quite a few things that you mentioned there, but like that's why I said to you that I'm questioning all the other things as well, right? It's not it's questioning the whole culture, and then from questioning the culture, it's going to become the whole religion and the way that we live, right? Yeah, so it's not just okay, like yeah, I'm going to question this, but no, because the Lungelo. Nah, don't take that, bro. Like as soon as someone says anything negative about that, then I'm going to be hard on to that. Yeah, but it's like no. Actually, even going through stuff like that, I'm like, except no, there's a lot of things that you have to question, and there's going to come a point where someone down in the future is going to say, no, man, I don't understand why this, and this, and that should happen. Maybe we should just do this and this, and then you go, yeah, perhaps that's true. It's like the way that we used, or the way that we how we used to go about with funerals, for example.
Yes.
Like we needed COVID to wake us up to say, etc. Man, if you're in a situation whereby someone has passed away and you don't have any cash to even try to make the funeral and you're struggling every day, right? It doesn't make sense to go and take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months to then get people from the Eastern Cape to come through and have a funeral, pay so much money for it, and then it lasts 1 or 2 days and they disappear, and then you're back into being poor. Then you go and you blame the government that they say you're poor.
I think a good example to that sentiment you're trying to share would be marriage. The wedding.
Yes.
The wedding day.
Yes, exactly. Yes. That exactly. So yeah, but it's the same with weddings. It's like, okay, it makes sense if you want to say you want to go through the whole process of ilobola and how beautiful it is and so on and so forth. It's like, okay, but now think of what the future is. Don't make the same mistakes that the past made when they said, okay, we're only looking at the beauty of marriage now. And it's like, okay, what happens when you're married? Because you spend more time in life outside of the actual marriage, or not outside of the marriage, but outside of that ceremony than the ceremony. Yeah. So you should actually devote most of the time thinking about the outside than this thing that you're doing now. Because, yeah, it's like, okay, I'm going to make a great wedding. I only have 5K per month, but I'm going to throw a 100K wedding. And then I'm going to work the future in trying to pay off those debts. And then as I'm trying to go on, there's other things that are going to pop up as well that you're going to have to pay for. And then it's all of a sudden the timeline that you're going to have to pay back that debt expands. And the more it expands, the more you go, oh no, but say I'm not getting this from the government. I'm not getting. It's like, well, what about that choice that you made back then in the name of, say, culture or in the name of religion? Yeah, well, so again, it's like you don't want to completely eradicate it, because again, as soon as you completely eradicate the culture, you have no other basis to stand on unless you eradicate and put something in there. Yeah, but at the same time, you need to mold with the times, and you need to mold with individual preferences and how you want to live. So again, like something like Intlawolo and Ilobola, like you said, your brother's doing it, right? So it's like, well, perhaps he's a traditional guy, and if I tell him, no, bro, you don't have to do that because it makes logical sense, he doesn't care about logic. He wants cultural sense. He wants to feel spiritually liberated or whatever way he feels. So that's up to him. Because if he doesn't do it, that takes away that whole structure within him. And then what is he got left? Yeah. So therefore, it's like, okay, well, look, this is the logic that I have behind it. And then this is what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Still your choice. And if you do it, I completely understand because these are the reasons that you put forth. Yeah. But then if someone decides not to do it because of the reasons that they put forth and they make sense, you can't then go do the opposite and say, no, it said that wasn't the right way to do it because this is because I did it. Yeah, which goes back to, again, that's why I was tippy-toeing around going to something like Ugoluga. It's like Ugaluga. So it's like if someone else decides, okay, look, I'm gay or transgender or part of the LGBTQ plus, and I don't want to do this thing, whether my uncles have done it or not, that's their problem, right? And if they say that I'm shunning the family or not, it's like to who? It's my family too, right? Because if I'm not doing it and they did it, they're going against what I'm doing. So are they shunning the family that I'm in as well? Yeah, well, just because the majority is with them that have done it, I've got other females in the family that haven't done it. So who are they to tell me about it? Yeah, but then obviously with that you encounter a bit more stricter and more harsher people that are going to then be very robust into trying to stop it. Because as soon as you say that it's not right, then everyone that has done it has never been right. And not, our fathers and our uncles and our grandfathers aren't right. But then you have to tippy toe and say, okay, well then maybe I understand why they did it and why they're still doing it. But for me, it's not for me. And if you're going to shun me for it, I don't think it's the right thing.
Perhaps we need to be a bit critical about it, né? And we need to be as explicit as possible and not try to be very accommodating, and just to and take and be strong in what we actually preaching, and we do not try to be as flexible as possible, like I mentioned, by just analyzing the actual situation. First of all, when we create these social structures, is that first of all is order that we're trying to achieve, and we try to look at the improvement of the people when we create these social structures. And luckily for us, that we have two sides of the world right now in one country, where one side is not very admirant of the primitive structures. They have like flexible structures that has a Western philosophy in it. Then we can be able to actually weigh our options and say, in this side we're achieving so much of, in this side we're achieving so much of. Because now you look at the cultural structures that you're trying to question, and then you find that somewhere they are winning, though they are failing in one side. So we need to weigh how much are we winning and how much are we losing, and which side. But we are lucky that we actually have a study field where we can actually conduct our study at and do the comparison results and actually analyze the theory that we have at hand, having studied the fields. In terms of
so even with that, right? It's like if you go to a job, right, or a school, you implement something. So there's a goal that you have, you implement it, and then you go and you try to then find out if it's working or not. So you audit it all the time, right? You do that every 3 months or every month or every 6 months to see if it works or not. And you keep doing it for as long as it's there, right? So it's something like culture is such a big and great thing that who audits it, right? Who checks if these things work or not? It's the same with religion. Who checks if those goals that they had back in the day, if they are working or not, right? And you find that the people that it benefits won't want to check because to them it works, right? It's like, look, man, it works for me that I'm going to get paid something that I don't even understand, but as long as I'm not losing, then this whole situation works. But then the people that want to question it are going to be the people that mostly are the ones that are not going to benefit from it. Yeah, but so who does that? It has to then be an internal structure that keeps to reevaluate and re-audit all of these things that we live with, because no one else is going to do it for you. At work, maybe your superiors do it, but who are your superiors in life?
Perhaps let me emphasize this. Let me just pick sides, and then I'm going to advocate for the cultural structures. But I had mentioned that at the beginning of the conversation, that I advocate for cultural structures a lot. The problem is when the government disallows the practice of cultural structures in totality. that is where the loopholes gets to be. Yeah. Because like you just mentioned now, right, that there need to be an internal audit of the progress, so we can actually see whether we're progressing as the community, as a society at large. The first problem is that government has deprived the parenting role to the parents, that they cannot parent to their maximum ability of parenting. They are limited by the laws of the government. And if we look at how the society is now in terms of children, we look at how the social order that was created, we can safely say that it is not working. That is the first societal structure that government took. It took the parenting structure away. Now the parenting,
Yeah.
it has no powers to parent. Parents have no power to parent their own children because there's boundaries that are a lot very hard for them to achieve. Now, what happens is that the government have changed the trading system to the monetary system where there's jobs. Now, in the morning, your mother leaves the house to go to work. Your father leaves the house to go to work. You leave the house, you go to school. You spend 8 hours at school, or however many hours, but you're gonna spend more hours in school than you're gonna spend hours with your parents. Therefore, it means
Yeah.
just the whole creation of your whole situational living, it does not give you enough time to actually learn from each other or teach each other. So the most of the learning habits that you get them from outside. So
Yeah.
the parenting structure is already disrupted there. Going up, in the cultural structures, you have, let me just draw to you the cultural structure, how it is before the whole thing. You have the parenting structure, which means governance begins within one home. That is how you could be able to find a child who has the same behavior as the child next door. You know that these people come from a certain place because of how they are taught at home. So you have the parents at home. If maybe you have a conflict and then you cannot fix it within.
So before you discuss that the governmental role, I wanted to say as well that even with that structure that you're talking about, with the kids being brought up by their peers and brought up outside of work, and then obviously the parents aren't there. That there is, back in the day it was, well, look, if the males go to work, you only have one person that works, and you have the females that stay at home. Then you can pay higher salaries for those guys that are going to work, which will then be able for them to have two parent or one parent working households. And therefore, when you do that, then you have the mother at home with the child,
But
right?
that period that you actually explaining now is actually in the middle. There is a
Yes.
before that.
Yeah. So that's the reason why some people move and go to other countries, right? So if you get paid higher in other countries, then you can afford to have that. But if you stay in certain countries whereby there's more of a drive for equality, and there's more of a drive of equal opportunity between the sexes because of whatever reason, whether it's right or wrong, then the negative impact becomes that, because then you have more people in the job sphere, right? And therefore you don't have to pay one person more things because there's more people that are there to do it. So then it kind of gets halved. Then one of the people get it and the other person gets the other salary because now they're both here. And then that becomes a consequence. A consequence of that becomes that then the children get raised by the outside. Yeah. So with a good structure to say, look, okay, you know what we're gonna do? We want females and we want males to all be working and everyone to be equal and everyone to be on the same sphere. It's like, okay, cool. That sounds good, right? That sounds good if you have that in plan. But now what the negative impacts of that is then this. And if you're able to live with that, then it's fine. Then the kid goes to work. Kid goes to school, and then you don't have to then you won't then be the parent for that time, and then you meet them again later on in the evening. And then you go to places like America where it's even more saturated, and then people have to work 3 or 4 jobs, to even stand a chance. Then you work in 3 or 4 jobs, and then you never see your child. And then they get brought up on the streets, and they become gangsters, and the males become likely more.
What I'm hearing,
yeah.
if ever we take that approach, then it means investing more to the economic structure more than to the family structures. Then what are we living?
Yes.
Who are we living for? Are we living for the economic hub that is out there controlled by whatever, or are we living for ourselves? Because the more we spend less time at home, we're spending time away from ourselves. You spend more time thinking about your job. You're spending more time at your job more than the time you spend at home. So your whole living is structured by the outside world. Then there's less time to invest to yourself and the people around you. That is where the cause for chaos is. That one who doesn't have a job, you become contradictory with them in terms of values. For example, I work here, my brother works in Joburg, other one works in Durban. We go home in December. When we meet there, we are not brothers. We are strangers. We are not brought up by the same values. They exposed to a certain world. I'm exposed to a certain world. We do not tolerate each other. We do not understand each other because we do not breathe the same space. That is the problem with having governance governing your life, because it's in that you are dependent in your whole structure of life. And I feel like we're debating a little bit, but I want to mention.
Yeah. Sorry.
Within the structures of government, because I'm advocating for practices, within the structures of government, you are dependent. Everything about you need to depend to the structures of government. The house you live in, it's a bond. Water you drink, you must be paid. The electricity is prepaid. The road you work on, it's actually government. Every facility of your life, even your sewage system is controlled. Just the small segments of your life, everything is controlled. So that means you are not independent. You are not independent when you're under the structure of governance. Hence, I'm saying that if ever we look back to the cultural practices, they actually, all of them advocate for your individual space. Right now, I'm one of the most rich people in this country because government hasn't influenced a lot in where we live. We still get the land through the chief. You see, just say, I want to house there, they go check there if there's a person who's building there, they give you the perimeter, and they say, this is your land. I do not have to pay lump sum. I'm just lucky that I'm from far from the city. That is how life's supposed to be. You're supposed to be that free, that freedom to a certain extent. But now, as I was saying that, segments of this conversation, they will always be contradicting with another. If ever we want to take out a certain structure, it means we're going to touch on a certain structure, or we're going to be just going to be ignorant of a certain structure that we're supposed to be talking about. So we're only going to cater for what we actually want to advocate for, but we're not going to cater for total. And it goes back to what I mentioned about what are we trying to achieve. Do we want to create a new social order? Do you want to go back to your previous social order? Do you want to actually create a middle ground for these social orders? What are we trying to achieve? If ever we want to try the middle ground for all these social orders, then the downside of that will be that when you're creating a middle class, it means you do not have the actual base to stand on. You do not have a ground. You do not have a background to reference with. Everything you're starting afresh. Is it possible? Is it doable to create this social order where we actually have everyone meeting each other halfway? Is it possible? Give me your opinion.
Yeah. Not really, because at the end of the day, with every passing time, the halfway will always move. And today, where we're trying to move towards, it might not be exactly that tomorrow. Yeah. So you're going forward to a place, and then all of a sudden tomorrow you wake up, and then halfway is now moved to a bit closer or a bit further, and you've maybe passed halfway, or you're still going to go halfway. So to meet halfway is never something that is going to be likely to happen. Yeah, well, so you kind of have to live with change and also live with things being in structure, which is what we were saying yesterday, is that you want to move forward, and if you're moving forward, you at the same time you don't want to move too far forward because then you break everything that you're moving with. And at the same time, you don't want to stay at the same time without moving forward because then you get left behind. Yeah. So coming back to something like culture, it's like you always have to reevaluate it because even the people that don't reevaluate it, right? Time moves by so quickly that it has to change. Yeah, well, so even if I'm a strict person and I said, "Bana, Intlawula should always be there, and Ilobola should always be there, and Waluga should always be there, because these are the structures that it is," then life says, "Okay, cool. You don't live alone. You live with other people, right?" And then you move, and then life moves, and life moves. And what happens is then you figure out that I need to go back get a job. How am I going to get a job? I need to then move to the city because I need to survive. Okay, what am I going to do then? Well, I'm going to have to move to the city because if I stay here, I won't survive. Then you move to the city and then you have to get another job. And then you find when you're in the city, no, you can't be with this person. You have to be with this person. And now my interests lie here. And this is who I'm attracted to. And then as you go on and you make those other decisions, you look back to your culture, you go, shit, now I'm here and I'm dating a Scottish woman and she's got her own set of thoughts and I'm now in this type of job working with these people. Now all of a sudden, I want to then still go back to those roles and all those thoughts of ilobola and all of that. It doesn't make sense for this. So you have to then adapt. That's what happened with Waluga, right? It's like, well, I have a child now, he's in the city, and then all my parents have passed away back in the Eastern Cape. So I can't go take him back there. Who's he going to live with? It doesn't make any sense. So he has to be here. So if he's going to be here, how am I going to then go and take those cultural practices that are exclusively for there and the things that you use for example, Gulalugo and all these other terms and all these small things that are only exclusive to that place, you can't. And you have to then abide by these rules. And then here you go, okay, well then what's more closest to that? And then you go, okay, I'm going to go to the closest thing, but it's still not that. So even if you're steadfast in trying to then adapt to that and you want that to happen, your life will move by so quickly that all of a sudden, and then let's say then you move to Joburg, right? And your whole structure moves to Joburg and then you're living there, right? And then all of a sudden your parents and your whole family passes away or you have no connections with the Kapa or the Eastern Cape. Now you're in Joburg or now you're in Limpopo. Yeah, and now your child is going to school there and now he's 18 or 19 and now he wants to be a man. Then you go, okay, Funigo Lugele Kapa, but there's no one there. Funigo Lugele Eastern Cape and there's no one there. So what are you going to do now? Okay, well, I'm in Joburg. But then what is he going to do in Joburg? Because Abetkosa and Joburg are not that much and they're all saturated with every other culture. Yeah, so the things that you then would benefit in the Eastern Cape or in Cape Town, you don't benefit that in Joburg. So now you have to go with that means there in Joburg. You have to find you have to find certain ways in order to do that. Or you don't do it at all because what happens if you move to England? Then you have none of that. Yeah, and now you have no connection with the other but yeah, sorry.
Well, enemy is time here, and I think I want last remark.
You can't fight it.
We can sum up. Yeah, we are obviously what I'm understanding from this conversation is that it's actually not about intlawulo. It's
no.
We're facing a very challenging time as societies where we have multiple ways that we could conduct ourselves in. That is the actual problem that we have. We do not have a problem with Uhlawula, we do not have a problem with Gwaluka, but we have a problem with a much bigger picture where we are mixing up with the outside world. Because if ever we were still cornered in our own corners where amaXhosa bewodwa, amaMpondo bewodwa, amaSotho bewodwa, xa sisiya apho siye because of certain reasons, siyodlula enkosini, sifike sizitsho and all that, we wouldn't be sitting with this problem. So the problem that we have currently, it is not the small dynamics of the societal structure, but the societal structures at large. And that is, and that requires a better conversation than we currently in, and that requires more than me and you can be able to articulate exactly, or even give recommendations. We really need the societal leaders to have seminars, to have workshops where they actually sit down and look at the current societal structures and ask themselves, which side are we going? How can we go forward? If ever now every man needs to leave their houses and go look for a job in the city, what are we saying about the Eastern Cape? Is it still relevant? If it's still relevant, why is it still relevant? How can we make it So for me, it sounds to me that we need a middle class. We need, I don't know what is it called, but I think I've had this, where it's called, you take your highest thought and you take mine, and then we create a third person.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of thoughts where we put together our greatest mind and actually try to create structures based on those greatest mind, and those structures need to actually be acknowledging everything that is within, because everything that is in place right now, it ignores a certain aspects that is very important, and it contradicts with another structure that is already there. We need to be realistic about our current lives, that our current life now requires us to live away from home. Unless we're saying that we're now engaging to a new revolution where we're fighting to get it back. You see, but if we're not saying that, then it means within our structures of the cultural structures, we need to find a way that we can emerge our structures of cultures with the new world of governance, a new world of westernization, and we need to not be very proud, because I think one of the factors that is playing a huge negative role is the pride factor, that we are too proud to actually let go of certain standards, or too proud to actually amend certain standards. And I don't really believe that we need to let go, but we need to amend. For example, if we're saying that xa ngaba umntu elobola kulotyolwa nge-10,000 rand, and we're saying that the current value of a car is 10,000 rand, and then we're saying that ilobola is 10 cows. Are we saying that an average man needs to have 100,000 rand? Makes no sense. But I think previously, in certain parts of the cultural side, they have what they call inkomo yakomkhulu, where even though the cow, its value now is 10,000 rand, but when you're getting married, inkomo yokulobola, it becomes maybe 2,500 rand. So we need to amend our structures in that form, where we're saying that how can we use the monetary system now to our advantage, because now we still want men to get married within the structure of ilobola, or do we want men to not get married in the structure of ilobola? What's going to be the consequences? I would recommend that we still continue to practice ilobola, but we need to have an informed decision among all the chiefs, all the head of the villages, all the head of the cultural side, and say that now that we are facing with this governance, what we can do is that now, when a man wants to pay ilobola, inkomo is not going to be equivalent to its market value based on the economic world. It's going to be in the value that we have made a decision on. So inkomo in this instance is going to be 2,000 rand, it's going to be 3,000 rand, it's going to be 5,000 rand. In this way, we're trying to meet halfway the middle class. We're trying to meet halfway everyone among us, that we need the family structure to be restored. We need men to get married. We need children to be taught within the structure of marriage. And when we say intlawulo, we're saying that now we're facing boys at the age of 17, he's still in school. He has a child. So what are we saying about intlawulo now? Right now, we're still going to say that this boy needs to pay 5 cows, and then 5 cows is equivalent to 50,000 rand. What are we saying about that? So we need to have those kind of conversation. And with that, Maiji, for this particular session, I think I want to wrap my side, and then we can have a sub conversation about this again if we still see that it needs to be.
Yeah. Okay, well, before you wrap it up, again, it goes back to then my question. So that's why it's like, okay, the people that do then believe in things like Ilobola and Tlau, why is it the male that has to pay?
Why is it?
The male that has to pay still. I still don't understand that.
So that is your main. Oh no, I think I explained this to you, that the entire existence of life between all the species, animal species, men or male always take the leading position, be it in animals like lions, be it in every other species. The male always take the dominating factor. Now, if ever the structure of our families is created by male, that is why when we're saying that umntana ngowakuloyise, we say that the child actually belongs to icala labotatake. That is why when we get married, it is us who invites the bride over to our side. That is like the worldwide structure of life. So to question particularly in lobola, then it's going to be an unfair criticism, because in other structures of life, male still takes the dominating factor. You see?
Yeah. So look,
it is not.
Even with that, right? So if you have a daughter, right, and the whole point of marriage is to make a family, right? So we can agree on that, right? So if you have a daughter, you know that that child can only have a family or start a family with kids up until say the age of 38, 40,
After?
right? Until the age of about 38, 40.
Yes.
Right? Then they can have children. After that, then there's more chances of illnesses and there's less chances of them having a child. Right? Okay. So whereas if you have a male, right, he can have a child even at 60.
I want to note another thing here. If we're going to criticize lobola based on its financial value or whatever value that it holds, there is other cultural practices within the marriage that the bride side, the woman side, they take to the male side that is actually equivalent in terms of value to the one that it was paid by the man. It actually meets each other.
Yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
uselwa impahla kokwini xa ngaba uselwa impahla eza mpahla basayo, it's a lot. It's a lot. Value of it can be equivalent to that of the lobola. So it is not just about the financial value or whatever value. It is about bringing the families together. These are the things that we might need from your side, and these are things we might need on our side. My G, I really like this, but my phone is ringing behind me. These guys are waiting for me. I really need to.
All right, my boy. Okay, so next time we'll start off with that, with why, like I said, with why.
You're made.
Yeah. So my stance is, if anyone needs to pay, it should be the female, and if not,
nothing at you behind me.
If not, no one should pay.
Big Chip, till next time, man. Let's wrap it up.
All right, my boy. No stress. Sharp it.
Sure, man. Baby, if no